This is part two. These same soul ties from your former life, man. These same soul ties from your former life, all right, influences the current life that you have. So when you hear people talk about past lives, there are past life cycles or lives in which you live. And also when you entered in here, there were several copies, if you like came out of a test tube, or clones that people could purchase as adopted children or what have you from certain standard corporations, all right, set up as staples in society, such as Walmart, so on and so forth. All right, there's certain staples. Planet Fitness is one, and the thing is this relativity through association ever since the cracking of the atom pertaining to CERN is like a grading scale based upon your DNA and the spiritual soul ties of that which is most relative to you to create a um, a somewhat of a spiritual your spiritual circumstances, karma, and obstacles, which is distributed throughout your beings. All right. So when you think of a soul tie or a psychological bond with an individual, and since several lifetimes, though you've changed a lot in relativity to other individuals that exist in your reality, you would be most likely, and the doors of perception pertaining to the dimensions that you exist inside of, all right, there is a spiritual bond that would seem to form, okay, between your trains of thought, which influence your current mind, if you go according to knowledge and not by the wisdom of God, which that would be based upon memory and experience, and that knowledge would be imperfect and also circumstantial. All right. This would also pertain to relationships and variances between percentage degrees. If, take for instance, you dated a girl and she was a cutter and suffered with depression, that eventually through soul ties and whoever she associates with, yeah, or have relations with, and you as well throughout your different lifetimes will create some type of dark bridge, because it is a work of the flesh. And this attracts spirits, as well as oftentimes when things get difficult within a country, then the nature of trade of that country changes, and sex becomes a trade. And oftentimes these individuals that have to go into this pertaining to this green mile, this stretch from leaving the realm that you're from to going to Hyperia or this desert, will create these bonds also with draconian spirits, which is the survival basis of base of your brain, your fight or flight, in which you have the amygdala and you are able to reason. And this individual, for mammon, okay, to put food on the table or whatever, so on and so forth, okay, will oftentimes disassociate in order to get the deed done. So the more times they do this, the more times that their spirit or that being is taken over by the host, a different host, and they have a handler such as a draconian spirit in the fourth dimension. Okay. Now, draconians, mantis, and all of these creatures are interdimensional beings in which have different circumstances and obstacles, and oftentimes when the human body is unable to resolve a conflict, it is due to something foreign that has entered the body, meaning not human, because the human body should be able to heal itself from practically everything, except for things that are not natural. All right. And along with our advancement of science and medicine and the connection through different ages and interdimensional intelligences, which we call spirits, these entities and deities and other gods in which individuals worship throughout society outside of Christianity through the eloping of circumstance and one night stands, even relationships, creates a bond in which none can escape because it's psychological and interdimensional as well. Therefore, creating the soul tie between an individual and an interdimensional being, which is a spirit, these two individuals being lost in translation, you have a draconian spirit that you are truly courting versus the three-dimensional image, which represents your object of affection. Therefore, your affections oftentimes become unnatural, and your thirst is for something other different than a human spirit in a human body. Okay? And these worlds, when they collide with these soul ties and so on and so forth, is a dimensional situation that creates a hybrid of circumstances for an individual which are not exactly natural. So things become difficult to navigate. And we would call this situation to a degree karma. So it is important to break those soul ties. And also, this is a way in which oftentimes many entities, they're only eloping for you as a means to escape a deep state in which they are experiencing a less favorable reality. Oftentimes, these websites, such as porn sites, if you look at the background, these come from deep underground bases and different bases in which these individuals work off a debt and an interdimension on camera. That's why you never see these girls out in society, such as on Chatterbait. And, you know, these same individuals, what they oftentimes do is build a psychic link or bond with their viewer, in which creates so-called addictions to such situations due to the plasticity of the mind and the restructuring of your neurons. As Neuro was one of the individuals that persecuted millions and millions of Christians and your ways of thinking, so that in such, if it is carnal, will create a stronger bond or a stronghold, okay, with these affections and sensations, which are lowly and not necessarily spiritual. They're spiritual, but psychologically they are bonded to that which is temporal. Therefore, they are finite and dead-end forms of thinking. All right, this is going to affect your decisions and your choices and your circumstances in your life, although it may be in such subtle ways, quite immediately will start chipping away at your time. If you're on the stretch to go back to Hyperia, then you have the circumstance in which, when you leave this realm, these same entities will be allowed, maybe possibly allowed a way to escape, in which it is a CIA operation in which they will work as servants in individuals' houses, in some cases in Hyperia, rather than be in the deep state, but have connections and ties, no different than when someone goes into jail and owes some type of money for protection, and will oftentimes, if one is not careful, will usurp the unsuspecting victor of their properties and may lead them to a certain demise. Now, I don't know if this is true in all circumstances, but I believe that this has happened to me a couple times. One of the times was completely, well, a couple of the times was my fault to a degree. Okay, but these things can happen, and I only tell you this for safety reasons. You know what I'm saying? So when you come through this portion, which is considered to be the desert, and opportunities and circumstances dry up, and you experience things such as Savannah syndrome and things of this nature, this will correlate with soul ties, and these soul ties will correlate with your community, all right, which may be defiled and operating off of memory knowledge, that if you know a person that knows a person that knows your neighbor, that when walking up and down the street, there's some degree of connection, okay, through a spiritual commonality in which you share a bond, creating circumstance and opportunity pertaining to the senses, which could be lowly, okay, and not on a spiritual up and up pertaining to natural affection, given the circumstances of society going through a desert. Okay, these are high risk situations, or situations that are not in such a situation that you would recognize immediately. Okay, nor it would be extremely difficult for you to keep track of, but it can. This is a natural. This is a spiritual circumstance that has a natural proponent that which would easily be able to make connections or keep connections with you, as it is attached to the mind or the collective subconscious, which we call a beehive. Okay, you want to break your soul ties, people. Uh, and that's really all I wanted to say to you. Now, I'm sorry that was a bit technical and wordy, but you know what I'm saying. I have to get through these words, and I try to perform it at the best ability I can, that is concise and not too confusing within a specified time range, that you could remember enough details of what I went through to have a picture or some ideation of what I speak of in the spirit. Peace and blessings be with you all. I'm out.